Today, we're talking about a skill you use every single day. You probably don't even think about it, but it just might be one of the most critical abilities for surviving and thriving in the 21st century. And it all comes down to how we read. So let's just start right there with a big question. What does it actually mean to read these days? I mean, is it just about seeing words on a screen and understanding them? Or has reading become something way, way more complicated? Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start with what we're calling the modern reading challenge. Because, the way we read today has completely transformed from how our parents or even our grandparents did it. Think about it. For most history, reading was pretty straightforward, pretty linear. You had one textbook, one newspaper. The information came from a single trusted source. But now we're basically swimming in a giant ocean of information. We have endless articles, blog posts, videos, and social media threads all at our fingertips, each one telling a slightly different part of the story. And sometimes they're flat out contradicting each other. This whole new world, it demands a completely different kind of reading. Yeah, this new reality, it forces us to become expert dot connectors. It's just not enough anymore to soak up information like a sponge. We have to actively build our own understanding from all these different pieces. So let's take a look at the specific skill that lets us do that. So researchers have a name for this super skill. It's called intertextual integration. I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but what it really means is this mental juggling act where you're selecting bits of information from different places, you're organizing them, you're checking to see if they back each other up, and then you're weaving it all together to create one solid, coherent picture in your mind. It's the difference between just collecting random facts and actually building real knowledge.
And this leads to two really different ways we can end up reading. On the one hand, you've got what the researchers call the mush model. This is when all the facts you read just get kind of jumbled up into a big mental soup. You might remember a fact, but you have no idea where you heard it. The goal, though, the ideal, is what they call the documents model. This is where you not only get the information, but you remember where it came from. That's what allows you to compare, to contrast, and to build a much smarter, more complex map of a topic.
All right, so if this skill is so important, what actually predicts who's good at it? Well, a team of researchers wanted to figure that out. And that brings us to the 4 key factors that they zeroed in on. So what they did was a massive systematic review. They weren't just doing one new experiment. They were gathering up all the research that had already been done to see what patterns emerged. They wanted to know what skills, what personal traits are consistently linked to a student's ability to do this whole intertextual integration thing. And just so you get the scale here, this wasn't a small undertaking. They pulled together the results from 25 separate studies, covering more than 5,600 students. By combining all that data, you can start to see big picture patterns that you'd totally miss if you only looked at one study. It gives us a much more reliable snapshot. And from this huge pool of data, they found that all the different skills and factors seem to fall into 4 main buckets: your basic reading ability, your thinking skills, what you already know and believe about the world, and finally, your motivation and personality. Okay, first up, language and literacy. This one's kind of obvious, right? Being a good reader helps you be a good reader. And sure enough, the data shows that things like basic comprehension have a moderate positive link. But moderate is the key word. It's a solid foundation, for sure. You have to have it. But it is clearly not the whole story, not even close. Next, let's talk about cognition and metacognition. That's just a fancy way of saying your thinking skills and your ability to think about your own thinking. So yeah, things like having a good working memory help, but what seemed to matter even more was whether students were consciously using strategies, like actively stopping to compare 2 sources or making a mental note of who wrote what and why. It's about being an active, strategic detective, not just a passive consumer of words.
And this brings us to a really crucial point the researchers make about knowledge. Here's the quote. Possessing relevant knowledge does not ensure that it will be effectively used. What that means is, just knowing a lot about a topic isn't some magic bullet. You can have all the facts in your head, but if you don't actively use that knowledge to ask questions and connect the dots between what you're reading, it doesn't do you much good.
And what about our last bucket, motivation? You'd think this would be huge, right? Like, if you're interested in something, you'll be better at it. And yeah, there's a connection.
But here's the surprise. The research found that the link between motivation and this skill was actually pretty small. It's weaker than the link to those cognitive strategies we just talked about. So while it helps not to be bored, your mindset isn't as critical as your mental toolkit. So we've learned a lot about what's connected to this skill. But here's the twist. Maybe the most powerful finding from this whole review is actually about what we don't know. So let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. To visualize this, the authors did something really cool. They created what's called an evidence gap map. Think of it like a chart of all the possible research questions, where they color in the boxes for topics that have been studied. It's a brilliant way to see the state of the science in a single glance. And when you look at the map for this skill, wow, the amount of white space is just striking. All those white boxes represent unanswered questions. And you see a really clear pattern. The younger the students, the more white space there is. The more we're just flying blind, especially when it comes to elementary school kids. So to be really specific, the review points out 3 massive gaps in what we know. First, there's almost zero research on kids below 4th grade. Second, hardly any studies have looked at students with disabilities like dyslexia. And third, most of the research has been done on middle-class Western students, so we have no idea if these findings hold true for kids from different backgrounds around the world. Okay, so after all of that, let's get back to the big question. Why should we even care about this intertextual integration stuff? Well, because this isn't just some abstract idea for academics. This is a fundamental, real-world skill for all of us. I mean, think about it. This ability is essential for pretty much all academic success, from a kid's book report all the way up to a PhD thesis. It's absolutely crucial for anyone working in today's information economy. And maybe, just maybe most importantly, it's the very foundation of being an informed citizen in a world of complex news, fake news, and endless online debate. Let's just boil it all down to one sentence. Being able to build a coherent mental model from a flood of different, often conflicting sources is no longer some niche, nice-to-have skill. It's one of the most important forms of literacy for simply navigating the world today. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. The next time you find yourself falling down an internet rabbit hole, reading about some topic, stop and ask yourself, what am I actually doing right now? Am I just collecting random facts and throwing them into that mental mush pile? Or am I actively, consciously connecting the dots? Thanks for watching The Explainer.